Dubai just made an offer that could rewrite tennis history forever. $1 billion. One decision, one woman caught between two nations fighting for her loyalty. Alexandra Eala, the Filipina sensation who's been electrifying courts across the Middle East, now faces the most controversial choice of her career. The whispers started in Abu Dhabi, they exploded in Dubai, and now the entire tennis universe watches as a 20-year-old rising star stands at the crossroads of patriotism, ambition, and an astronomical payday that dwarfs anything women's tennis has ever witnessed. This isn't just about money. This is about identity, legacy, and whether dreams have a price tag. Because when a government makes you an offer this staggering, saying no becomes nearly impossible, and saying yes might cost you everything you've ever fought for. 12 months ago, Alexandra Eala occupied rank number 139 in the world. Nobody beyond the Philippines knew her name. Tennis analysts considered her another promising junior who might crack the top 100 someday if everything went perfectly. Everything went perfectly. Auckland semifinals, Manila quarterfinals, Abu Dhabi quarterfinals, then Dubai happened. Standing under the blazing lights of the Dubai duty-free tennis stadium, Ayala dismantled world number 8 Jasmine Paolini in straight sets, while thousands of Filipino fans transformed the venue into something resembling a rock concert. The noise violated every tradition tennis holds sacred. The umpire pleaded for silence during points. Nobody listened. Ayala didn't just win matches in the UAE, she became a phenomenon. Spectators held signs reading, "Alex, please marry my son." Traffic jams formed around courts too small to contain the crowds desperate to watch her play. When she defeated Sorana Cristea to reach the Dubai quarterfinals, the roar could be heard 3 blocks away at the Irish village. The Filipino diaspora in the Emirates found their champion. Ayala represented something deeper than tennis victories. She embodied possibility, pride, and representation for millions of overseas workers who'd spent decades building cities they could never truly call home. Every forehand winner felt like vindication. Every fist pump looked like defiance. But behind the fairy tale, calculations were already happening in boardrooms Ayala knew nothing about. UAE sports officials watched the attendance figures. They analyzed the television ratings. They noticed how Ayala's presence transformed ordinary WTA matches into cultural events that united communities and generated millions in economic activity. They saw something more valuable than talent. They saw marketability fused with authenticity, a combination rarer than championship trophies. Ayala's ranking soared past 47. Her prize earnings approached $100,000 from a single tournament. Endorsement offers flooded her management team's inbox. But those numbers, impressive by any athlete standard, would soon look microscopic compared to what Dubai was quietly preparing to propose. Because somewhere in a climate-controlled office overlooking the Persian Gulf, a proposal took shape that would make Ayala the highest-paid female athlete in tennis history, by a margin so absurd it defied comprehension. The deal didn't just promise wealth. It offered citizenship, residency, training facilities beyond imagination, and a 10-year contract structured around one simple requirement: abandon the Philippine flag and compete for the United Arab Emirates instead. $1 billion upfront, $600 million annually for a decade, total package value $7 billion. For context, Serena Williams earned approximately $95 million in career prize money across her entire legendary career. This single offer dwarfed that figure 73 times over, before even accounting for the annual payments. The proposal landed on Ayala's management desk 3 days after her Dubai quarterfinal run ended with a loss to Coco Gauff. The document arrived encrypted, marked confidential, and accompanied by a non-disclosure agreement thicker than most doctoral dissertations. Everything about the offer screamed impossible, except the signatures authenticating its legitimacy. Will she even consider it? Can she afford not to? The answer would tear a nation apart. secrets this explosive never stay buried. Within 72 hours, leaked screenshots circulated across Filipino social media platforms, blurry photos of contract language, anonymous sources confirming details, sports journalists receiving tips from insiders who refused to go on record but insisted the offer was genuine. Facebook erupted first. Posts claiming Ayala had received a $1.6 billion package from Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan went viral, accumulating millions of shares before fact-checkers could respond. The supposed contract included not just astronomical payments, but also the title Queen of the Abu Dhabi Diamond Tennis Championship, a tournament that didn't exist but sounded plausible enough to convince thousands. Twitter became a battlefield. Alex Ayala trended worldwide as Filipinos woke up to headlines suggesting their national treasure might abandon them for petrodollars. Sports commentators debated whether such an offer constituted tampering. Tennis analysts questioned if UAE citizenship would even allow Ayala to compete immediately, or if residency requirements might sideline her for years. The UAE remained strategically silent. No official confirmation, no denial, just carefully worded statements from Dubai Sports Council representatives praising Ayala's extraordinary contributions to tennis in the region and expressing hope she continue finding success on our courts. That ambiguous language fueled speculation rather than quelling it. If the offer was fake, why not simply deny it? If it was real, why the cryptic non-responses? Ayala's management released a brief statement. Alexandra remains focused on her tennis career and representing the Philippines with pride. We do not comment on private matters or speculation. The carefully neutral phrasing satisfied nobody. It didn't deny the offer existed, it didn't confirm receipt, it simply acknowledged that something had disrupted the narrative, and they weren't ready to address it publicly. Behind closed doors, conversations grew heated. Ayala's family gathered in emergency sessions. Her father, a former professional footballer who understood the business side of sports, reportedly urged caution. Her mother emphasized loyalty to Filipino fans who'd supported her journey from junior circuits to WTA stardom. Her siblings argued both sides, torn between practical wealth and intangible heritage. Financial advisors presented calculations. $7 billion invested conservatively would generate approximately $280 million annually in passive income, more than Ayala could earn from tennis prize money in 10 lifetimes. Even after taxes, management fees, and wealth preservation strategies, the deal represented generational transformation. Her children's children's children would never worry about money. But Filipino sports officials saw it differently. They viewed the UAE's approach as predatory, a wealthy nation using financial leverage to poach talent it hadn't developed. The Philippines had invested in Ayala's training since childhood. The Rafael Nadal Academy in Spain, where Ayala honed her skills, received funding from Philippine Olympic Committee resources. Now, just as she reached her peak earning years, a foreign government wanted to purchase those returns? The tension escalated when a prominent Philippine senator publicly condemned the reported offer, calling it an insult to Filipino sovereignty and an attempt to commodify our national heroes. Another politician countered, arguing that denying Ayala the opportunity to secure her family's future forever represented its own form of exploitation. Suddenly, Ayala's decision, if she even had one to make, transcended sports entirely. It became a referendum on globalization, nationalism, athlete autonomy, and whether loyalty could be measured in dollars. And nobody bothered asking what Alex Ayala actually wanted until she finally spoke. Understanding why this offer cuts so deep requires understanding what Alex Ayala represents to millions of Filipinos scattered across the Gulf states. The Philippines exports labor. Approximately 11 million Filipino overseas workers send remittances back home that total over $36 billion annually, roughly 10% of the nation's entire GDP. These workers build Dubai's skyscrapers, staff Abu Dhabi's hospitals, manage Qatar's hotels, and maintain Kuwait's households. They sacrifice proximity to families for years, sometimes decades, chasing salaries their homeland cannot provide. Most live as permanent outsiders. UAE citizenship laws rank among the world's most restrictive. Even foreigners who spend 30 years in the country remain expatriates, forever guests rather than true residents. They contribute labor and taxes, but can't vote, can't own certain properties, and always carry the implicit understanding that their presence depends on continued employment. Alex Ayala became their symbol of transcendence, proof that a Filipino could dominate in the Middle East not through service jobs, but through excellence. When she walked onto Dubai's center court, she carried the aspirations of housekeepers who took buses 3 hours each way to watch her play. When she defeated top 10 opponents, she validated the sacrifices of construction workers who sent tournament ticket money home instead of using it themselves. Her success felt collective, communal, owned by a diaspora that rarely sees itself celebrated in elite spaces. Every match became a referendum on worth. Hers, yes, but also theirs by extension. So when rumors emerged suggesting Ayala might trade her Philippine passport for Emirati citizenship, the perceived betrayal hit like a personal abandonment. Social media comments from Dubai-based Filipino nurses and Doha-stationed engineers expressed variations of the same anguish. "We thought you were one of us." But other voices emerged too. Quieter, more conflicted, but no less passionate. Some Filipino overseas workers pointed out the obvious contradiction. They'd left home chasing better financial opportunities, yet now condemned Ayala for considering the same calculation on a vastly larger scale. Was there a threshold where pursuing prosperity became treasonous? And who decided where that line existed? Women workers, particularly, saw complexities others missed. Female Filipino domestic workers in the UAE earn approximately $300 to $400 monthly, about $4,800 annually. Ayala's reported offer would eclipse that figure roughly 1.5 million times over. For women who'd spent careers sending money home to siblings they barely knew anymore, and parents who'd aged in their absence, Ayala's potential windfall represented the fantasy they'd all chased: security so complete that sacrifice could finally stop. One viral tweet captured the tension perfectly. Everybody wants their kids to get opportunities abroad until those opportunities require leaving home behind. Then, suddenly, it's betrayal. Which is it? The UAE's Filipino community fractured along ideological fault lines. Nationalists organized protests outside the Philippine consulate, demanding Ayala reject the offer publicly. Pragmatists argued that criticizing a 20-year-old woman for considering life-changing wealth reeked of hypocrisy from people who had made similar, smaller-scale versions of the same choice. And caught in the center of this maelstrom stood Ayala herself, suddenly responsible for resolving contradictions that Filipino society had never managed to reconcile about labor migration, national identity, and the price of belonging. Then, Dubai made its move official, and everything accelerated beyond control. February 25, 2026. The Burj Khalifa's observation deck, cameras from 47 countries, a podium bearing both UAE and Dubai Sports Council insignias, and a conspicuous empty chair beside Dubai's Minister of Youth and Sports. The press conference was called with 18 hours' notice, barely enough time for international media to book flights, but precisely enough time to generate maximum speculation. Nobody knew who would sit in that empty chair. Some journalists assumed Coco Gauff, given recent Dubai tournament successes. Others speculated about Iga Swiatek or Ariana Sabalenka relocating training bases. Nobody guessed correctly until Alexandra Eala walked through the doors wearing a white pantsuit and an expression that revealed absolutely nothing.
The arena erupted. Cameras flashed like a strobe light convention. Journalists shouted questions in 6 languages simultaneously, none intelligible over the chaos. Ayala took her seat beside the minister, folded her hands on the table, and waited for silence that took 4 minutes to arrive. When she finally spoke, her voice carried steel nobody had heard before in her cheerful post-match interviews. I want to be extremely clear about something. I have not signed any contract with the UAE government. I have not agreed to change my citizenship. I am and remain proud to represent the Philippines. Relief swept through Filipino journalists. Vindication seemed complete, until Ayala continued speaking. However, I would be lying if I said I haven't thought seriously about the opportunities presented, and I would be lying if I pretended the criticism I faced from some corners hasn't hurt deeply. I've given everything to Philippine tennis. I've trained since I was 6 years old. I've missed birthdays, graduations, and family gatherings. I've played through injuries that should have sidelined me for months. And now I'm being told that even considering financial security makes me a traitor? The minister remained impassive, but his presence communicated volumes. This wasn't Ayala rejecting Dubai's offer. This was Ayala calling out the Philippines for making her feel guilty about attracting it. I've read comments saying I owe my success to the Philippines. I've seen people claim that accepting this offer would constitute stealing resources from a nation that invested in me. But let me share some math. My total career prize money is approximately $1.49 million. That's before taxes, coaching fees, training expenses, travel costs, equipment, physiotherapy, and agent commissions. My net earnings from tennis after 7 years on the professional circuit are roughly $400,000. She let that number hang in the air. The offer I received from Dubai is 17,500 times larger than my lifetime tennis earnings. 17,500 times. And I'm supposed to reject it without hesitation because questioning my loyalty hurts people's feelings? The room went silent. This wasn't the smiling, gracious champion who thanked fans in post-match interviews. This was a woman exhausted by impossible expectations. I haven't made any decisions. I'm also done apologizing for having decisions to make. If that makes me selfish, so be it. Everyone else has permission to prioritize their family's security. Apparently, I don't. She stood, ignored the tsunami of shouted questions, and walked out. The minister never said a word. He didn't need to. Ayala's speech accomplished exactly what Dubai wanted, positioning the UAE as the reasonable party offering opportunity, while the Philippines looked like crabs in a bucket pulling down anyone trying to climb out. The backlash was immediate and brutal, and it changed everything.
Within an hour, #AlexAlaIsOverParty trended on Philippine Twitter. Comment sections exploded with rage that made previous criticism look quaint by comparison. Ayala went from national treasure to public enemy so fast, the whiplash could cause injuries. Burned Ayala jerseys appeared on TikTok. Facebook groups dedicated to supporting her transformed overnight into forums for condemning her greed and ingratitude. Radio talk shows debated whether the Philippine Sports Commission should revoke funding from athletes who even entertained offers from foreign nations. Politicians proposed legislation prohibiting athletes who received government support from competing under different flags without reimbursing training costs. Former tennis players who'd never reached Ayala's ranking weighed in, suggesting she'd lost perspective and forgotten where she came from. Sports columnists wrote think pieces analyzing her character flaws. Commentators who'd praised her resilience 2 weeks earlier now questioned if her success had inflated her ego beyond repair. But something unexpected happened alongside the vitriol. A counter-movement emerged. Young Filipino women, particularly those working abroad, began defending Ayala with ferocity that matched her critics' anger. They pointed out the obvious double standard. Male athletes who moved abroad for opportunities faced minimal criticism, yet Ayala's consideration of the same decision sparked moral outrage.
They highlighted how the Philippines celebrated overseas workers' remittances, but condemned Ayala for potentially maximizing her earning power. Economics students broke down the numbers publicly. At her current trajectory, Ayala might earn $10 to $15 million across her entire career if everything went perfectly, a fraction of what male tennis players with similar rankings accumulated. Meanwhile, the UAE offered generational wealth that could transform not just her life, but potentially fund tennis development programs for hundreds of Filipino youth who'd never access resources she'd had. One viral thread posed a devastating question. If Alex's choice is selfish, what does that make all of us who left the Philippines for better opportunities? Are OFWs traitors too? Or do we only apply that label when the paycheck becomes too big to comprehend? International media picked up the story, framing it as a case study in athlete autonomy versus national ownership. ESPN ran a segment comparing Ayala's situation to Nigerian track stars who'd competed for other nations. The BBC interviewed sports ethicists, debating whether countries that benefited from athletes' prime earning years owed them ongoing loyalty obligations. Inside the Philippines, the debate exposed deeper fissures about class, opportunity, and who deserved judgment for pursuing prosperity. Wealthy critics condemning Ayala's alleged greed often sent their own children to American universities, a hypocrisy working-class Filipinos noted with increasingly bitter commentary. Ayala herself went silent. No social media posts, no interviews. Her management released a statement requesting privacy during a difficult personal time, which only intensified speculation that she'd already made her decision and was simply preparing the public for inevitable disappointment. Meanwhile, Dubai waited, patient, confident. Their offer remained on the table, unchanged and unchanging. UAE officials understood that every day of Filipino infighting strengthened their negotiating position. Why pressure Ayala when her own country was doing the work of making departure look increasingly appealing? The sports world watched a tragedy unfold in real time, a nation potentially destroying its relationship with its greatest tennis talent over an offer she hadn't even accepted yet, and might not have accepted at all if the response had been different. Then, Alex Ayala made her choice, and nobody saw it coming. March 3rd, 2026. Alexandra Eala posted a video to Instagram. No professional production, no PR team crafting messages. Just her, sitting in what appeared to be her apartment, wearing a Philippine national team jacket, speaking directly to a camera phone. "I'm staying," she said simply. "I'm remaining Filipino. I'm representing the Philippines for the rest of my career." The UAE's offer was real. It was staggering, and I considered it seriously. But I'm saying no. Relief swept across the Philippines, briefly, before Ayala continued. "I'm not staying because of nationalism or loyalty or any of the reasons people demanded from me. I'm staying because I realized something. The pressure I've felt these past few weeks is the same pressure millions of Filipinos face every single day. The choice between security abroad or identity at home. The calculation whether prosperity is worth displacement. The guilt that comes with even asking the question." She paused, gathering thoughts visibly. Accepting Dubai's offer would have solved every financial concern I'll ever have. It would have guaranteed comfort for generations. And turning it down isn't heroic, it's terrifying. Because I'm betting on myself in ways that might not pay off. I'm choosing a path where injury, bad luck, or simply not being good enough could mean I never see a fraction of what I walked away from. Her voice carried weight beyond her 20 years. "But here's what I learned. You can't buy back belonging once you sell it. Money replaces itself. Identity doesn't. And the Filipino diaspora that packed those Dubai stadiums, they didn't cheer for me because of my ranking or my prize money. They cheered because I represented something money can't purchase. Proof that we belong in spaces that usually exclude us." Ayla's eyes were red, but her jaw was set. "To everyone who said I owed the Philippines my loyalty, You were wrong. I don't owe loyalty to a concept or a flag or a government. I owe it to the people who saw themselves in my journey, the nurses who took double shifts to afford tournament tickets, the teachers who streamed my matches during lunch breaks, the kids practicing on cracked public courts dreaming that maybe, possibly, someone like them could matter in tennis. Ayla leaned forward slightly. And to everyone who called me greedy or ungrateful, you were also wrong, but I forgive you, because I understand that your anger came from fear. Fear that I'd abandoned ship. Fear that if even I left, it proved the Philippines couldn't keep anyone. Fear that your own sacrifices and choices to stay might have been for nothing if people with options chose differently. Ayla's final words arrived softly, but hit like hammer blows. I'm staying not because I have to, because I want to, because $7 billion can't buy what it means to walk into a stadium and hear Laban Alex from people who understand exactly what that fight entails. Dubai offered me wealth beyond imagination, but the Philippines offered me something rarer: community, purpose, a chance to prove that success doesn't require abandoning where you came from. She smiled, small, tired, genuine. I'm Alexandra Eala. I'm Filipino, and I'm not going anywhere. The video ended. Within an hour, it had 40 million views. But the story doesn't end with a decision. It ends with a question that haunts us all. Alex Ayala turned down $7 billion, not for poverty or publicity, but for something money can't quantify: belonging to a narrative larger than personal gain. Her choice won't pay her mortgage, it won't fund her retirement, it won't guarantee comfort if injuries derail her career, but it proved something the modern era constantly questions: that not everything has a price, and some currencies matter more than cash. The UAE's offer wasn't evil, it was business. The Philippine criticism wasn't entirely unfair, it was fear. And Ayla's decision wasn't simple, it was sacrifice disguised as choice. What haunts the story isn't what happened, it's what it reveals about the rest of us. How many of us would pass that test? How many could choose identity over $7 billion? And if we're honest, brutally, uncomfortably honest, would we even respect ourselves for making Ayla's choice, or would we secretly wonder if we'd just failed basic financial literacy? Maybe that's why her decision resonates, because deep down, we know what we would have done, and it makes heroes out of people who choose differently. If you'd turn down $7 billion for your country, drop a comment below. If you wouldn't, tell us why. And hit subscribe, because stories like this remind us why sports matter beyond scoreboards.